Hello, my name is Casey Quizmaster, and today I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the widget system in Unreal Engine 5. So if you don't know, a widget is basically a blueprint that is used to create UI elements with Unreal 5. So you can make main menus like this one where you can have, different things like controls, credits, of course starting the game. This also includes stuff like the HUD, so we have a health bar right there that will monitor your health throughout the game. We also have a score counter that will collect, when you collect items, will add to the score. And we also have a timer going up in the right hand corner. I'll also show you how to create a pause screen so that you can pause the game. And I'll show you how to create a bunch of different systems within these widgets that you can use for your games. So that being said, let's get into it. I'm going to show you everything you need to know about widgets in Unreal Engine 5. Okay, so we're going to go to our UI folder and we're going to start with the main menu, of course. Now we're going to upload some art. So for this I just made some pre-made assets. However, it's important to note that I am not an artist or a UI designer, so it doesn't look very good. So I recommend making it look good. So there are a couple of different ways that you can do it. I'm going to show you first, maybe the most traditional way where you design everything in a separate software and then you just bring in the assets into Unreal. So I have background image here, and then I have some buttons that I made. And then let's say I have, just a title. And so we're going to use these assets to basically make our main menu. So we're going to go to the widgets and we're going to make a widget. So it's going to be down here in user interface. It's going to be the widget blueprint. So we're just going to get the basic one. There's a couple different kinds, but this is just going to be the one you're going to use 99% of the time. So we're just going to name this W_main menu. We're then going to go into this. Alright, so just going over some basic UI stuff about the widget system. We have two different panels. The main thing. So we have the designer, which shows what the actual UI is going to look like. And then we have the graph, which functions exactly like the event graph for our blueprints, but there's just some different nodes and it's more focused about the functionality. So this is where your code goes, and this is where just the design. So within the design we have the palette, which basically acts as like every single thing that Unreal has to add. So we have images, buttons, different progress bars, sliders, and just like text that we have over here, and you can use the search palette to basically find it. This is sort of like the component section of a blueprint. We then have the library, which is just sort of like the same thing, but just has, buttons and just has more of the important stuff. I typically just use the palette just because I use the search bar. Hierarchy is just going to basically show you everything you've added, so it's just going to be like a list of all the components. And then this bind widgets is kind of complicated, so I won't really talk about that. And then you have a details panel, just like your other one. So to start off our main menu, and what you'll do to start off most different types of UI is add a canvas panel. This is just sort of going to act as a border for your actual UI. So our main menu is going to exist entirely within this border. And to add a background image that we put in before, I'm going to just take an image and I'm just going to put it in here. This just, again, is very simple, allows you to just put in an image into Unreal for your UI. So we're going to go here, we're going to rename it something like background. As you can see, there's a whole lot of different things in the details. I'll go over a couple of them in a second. But we're just going to make this, we're just going to select this, and we're going to go to these. So this is just like your transform, but just on a 2D scale. So there's no Z coordinate. It's just going to be the X position, so where it is in regards to, on the coordinate grid here. So you can see I'm moving it and change it. And then we have the size, which is how big it is on the X coordinate, which changes as we see here. So we are going to just use the computer resolution, which is 1920 by 1080. So that's going to cover our entire screen. So the next thing we need to do is change the anchor. So the anchor is basically where it's going to be mounted on in the screen and where the coordinate system is going to start from. So if I select this, we're going to get a bunch of different options, but you can also just, move it around like this and just move it wherever you want. For this, we're just going to do the entire thing. So we're going to select it. So basically it's going to lock it into the entire screen. So now we can look up our background, which I called space. So we do that. And now we have our little space background here. There's some other things you can do, such as give it a tint. So say we want it to be, yellow for some reason, we can make it yellow and we can change the color of it. I'm going to make it a little more purple because that seems, kind of spacey and it looks pretty. So we're just going to go with this. Typically, you're just going to want it to look however you want to look within the actual program you're designing it. You're not going to want to super rely on this, but just to show it off, I'll leave it like that. Okay, so now that we have that, the only other thing that I want to show off right here is just the Z order. So this is basically just going to say what layer to put this on. It's similar to layer in Photoshop, but you just have it with a number system versus like actually dragging them. So since it's the background, we're going to put this at -1. So this is going to be behind everything no matter what. Next, let's add another image. And let's make this our game title. So I have the game title here, and then I'm just going to make it bigger. Widen it out a little bit. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add the button. So we drag in a button, and then we're going to name this. We'll make this the start button. Then we are just going to go down here. As you see, there's more options here. So we're going to go to style, and you see we have normal, hovered, and pressed, and disabled. So this is going to what the button's going to look like normally when we're not interacting with it. This is what the button's going to look like if we hover over it. And then if we actually press the button, we can make it look different. So you can customly design these in your programs such as Photoshop, Illustrator, or Procreate. You can custom design it to where they're different. But I'm just going to show a simpler way of customizing it in Unreal. But first, let's actually make this the start button. So we're going to go to normal. We're going to select the image, and we're going to find our start button. And real quick, I'm just going to do that for normal and hovered. You can also do it for disabled if you plan on having the button disabled, but I'm normally going to have that, so I'm just going to leave that blank. All right, so let's put this in the corner. Then we're just going to drag this anchor down here. As you can see, it looks a little darker than normal. So for some reason, they make the tint basically as is. So we're going to go to the tint, and instead of having it this, we're just going to bring it all the way up, and that's going to get us the color that we want. I don't know why they make the tint default like that. It's kind of annoying. Another thing to note is that there's different way to draw the objects. So it can draw it as the image itself. It can draw it with a certain border. It can draw it as a box. But if you do that, it can basically distort your image. So I recommend just doing it as image or rounded box. I'm going to do mine as image. And there we have that. So then let's go to hovered. We're going to have the tint be a little darker around here, and that way when we hover over it, we're going to have a tint to our actual button. So as you can see, you get a little preview here, so you see it would be a little tint. And then for press, let's say that it just goes completely dark. You probably wouldn't do that, but just to show it can be different in different states, we'll do that. And so as you can see, normal, hovered, pressed. I'll show that when we actually hook it up. But for now, I'm just going to add some other buttons, and you can add whatever buttons you want. All right, so here I have my 4 buttons here that I just added. I have controls, credits, and exit. I've set them up all just like my start button, and I also labeled them, which you should do. I forgot to do this one, but I'll do that real quick. So the next thing we need to do is actually set it up to where we can actually have this menu in a physical place. Now, one way to do it is just to do it in the third-person map or whatever map you're actually doing it, and have that basically appearing at the beginning of the game. But me personally, I like to put it in its own separate map. File, new level. I'm going to select empty level. I'm going to create. It's going to create this one. We're going to do Control Save, or hit the save icon. And we're going to go into our maps folder, and we're just going to call this main menu. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to open the level blueprint. So if we go to this little blueprint icon right here, we can open the level blueprint. So this basically acts exactly like a blueprint of an actor, except the actor in this case is going to be the physical level itself. You can have this, of course, for any level, but we're going to specifically use it for here. So we're going to delete the event tick, and we're going to go straight to this event begin play. So on event begin play, we're obviously just going to want to open our main menu widget. So we're going to use a node called create widget. This is just going to basically, as it says, create a widget. We're going to then select the main menu, so W_main menu. However, this is not actually going to display it. What we're going to actually have to do is drag off this return value and do add to viewport, which is actually just going to show the level once we play the game. So we go over here, we go to our main menu, we press play, and it took a second to load, but here we have the actual main menu that I made. As you can see, the spacing is a little off. Now, an important thing to note is that if, say, I move this, it's going to drastically change the size and shape of it. So this is why packaging is important, to make sure the UI looks good on actual devices and not just in Unreal Editor. But I probably could have spaced these out a little bit better, but since it's, a fake menu, I'm probably not going to actually go back in and fix it. But I highly recommend you, of course, make your UI look good. So as you can see, we have the buttons. If I click them, it goes black. If I hover them, it slightly goes darker. So it's functioning, but you can see they don't do anything. Another glitch you might notice is if you click somewhere that's not a button, say like right here, your mouse goes away, because this functionally acts as you clicking into the game, and we haven't done the proper settings. So we're going to add some settings to this main menu just so that we have it set up properly. You could also do this in your actual graph widget right here. You could do it in here, but I'm just going to do it in the main menu because I think it just works a little bit better, and it just will always work no matter what. First thing we're going to do is set show mouse cursor. Now for some reason it doesn't pop up right away, but once you unclick that, the context sensitive, we can get this. Okay, so as you can see, we have this. We're going to set this to true. However, there is this little target that we need to connect here, so we're going to get player controller, which just basically is a node that will access the player's controller, i.e. in this case the mouse. So we're going to get this. Now there are two different get player controllers. Make sure that yours is the one that has a player index and a return value, but we're going to plug this in here, and then we're going to compile save. So if we go into here and we click in, you see the mouse doesn't go away because the mouse is supposed to be there. However, there is an annoying glitch that still occurs, that basically when you play the game and say I was going to press this button, and you might notice that this happening in other things you're doing in Unreal, you actually have to click in the game in order to basically access the game. Now, this might just seem like, you might just get used to this. It might not seem annoying, but this is very, very annoying for the players. And when you package the game, it'll actually be like that in the packaged version, which we definitely don't want. We don't want the player to have to click into the game to actually play the game. So a very, very important note that I have literally not seen a single tutorial go over that I learned about is called set game mode. We're going to set game mode, and as you can see, there's two here. There's set game mode only and set game and UI. We're going to set it to set game and UI. So we're going to go here. Again, we have another thing for the player controller. So we're just going to go over here. We're going to create a reroute node to clean it up. And then it says widget to focus on. We're just going to go over here to this create widget. We're going to drag off this return value and plug it in right there. And then we are just going to make some reroute nodes to clean everything up a little bit. All right, so we have this set up. These other settings you can mess around with, but personally I think the default settings work perfectly. So basically what this is going to do is it's telling the game that once the mouse is in there, it's going to focus on the UI. You don't actually have to click into it. So it's going to avoid a very important step. So we're going to go in here and we're going to press play. And just the mouse is already in the game. It's kind of hard to see in this example, but I'll show a different thing a little bit down the line so you understand what I'm talking about a little bit better. But first, let's actually start making these buttons have functionality. Okay, so real quick, just to go over some information. So you'll see that there's actually no event begin play node in the widget graph. It actually takes the place of these two, so we're going to delete these. And if we type in event begin play, it's going to give us event construct. Basically, this is the equivalent of event construct, and your event pre-construct is the equivalent of the construction script within the Blueprint system. I don't know why they don't just call this event begin play. It really doesn't make much sense. Just to let you guys know that, I don't believe there's anything we need to do with those nodes right now. But if we go to Designer and we select our Start button and we scroll down to the bottom, we get these events, and we can just go on clicked and hit plus. So on click, we are just going to take this, and this is going to be our Start button. So we are just going to go off this. We're going to open level by name. You also open it by an object reference, but I personally think it's way easier just to do name. And you're going to want to get the exact name of your level right here. So for me, that's the third person example map, which I'm going to get real quick. All right, so I just went to the actual file to copy the name, but bam. So then we have this. So once we click the button, it's going to open level by name, which is going to be the third person level. So let's just try that real quick. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to press start, and then bam, there we have it. All right, so we go here and we go to start, and as you can see, we start the game. So here we have it. However, you'll notice the mouse is still there. We can still see the mouse, which you most likely don't want for your game. You might, but for me personally, and I think for most games, you don't want to be able to see the mouse. Also, you notice if you click, the mouse disappears, which is kind of weird and inconsistent. That has to do with part of the settings. As you can see, You can't really see this, but my mouse, as you can see, is kind of freaking out because the settings are not correct. So what we actually want to do is we actually want to open up your map. So I'm going to open up my third person map. You open up whatever map you're working on. And you're probably going to want to do this for, every single map in general. If you have multiple maps, going to want to open up the blueprint. So we're going to do event begin play. On event begin play, we're going to go off and we're going to again set game mode. We're going to set it to game only this time. Another important step I just forgot was to, first we're going to get the player controller. And then we're going to just set show mouse. We're going to set that to false. So we're going to go here and we're going to go here. Again, this node is very, very important. These set input modes, I don't know why no one talks about them. They're very important. That glitch I was talking about is very annoying. Just make sure that you always include those. So we're going to go right here. We're going to straighten this up a bit. And there we go. Let's just comment this, something like level setup. If we go back to our other map, our main menu, we hit play, we hit start, and boom, the mouse goes away immediately and we're immediately just in the game. Okay, so now let's do the other functionality. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to this exit button. And we're going to just hit. So this is going to be the easiest. We're just going to do quit game. Quit game. And we're going to do this. Make sure that you probably don't want to have ignore platform restrictions, just because that will make the game a lot safer. This specific player is just mainly for multiplayer. So if you have like multiple people in the game and one person quits, you can have it specified to what they are. But for a single player game, you can just have this exactly like this and it'll work perfectly. So just to show it off, we go to main menu, we hit play, we hit exit, and it just exits the game. And if it was a package game, it would just, exit to your desktop like a normal game. The next button is I'm just going to show off basically one of these. Actually, I'll show off both, but for a certain reason. So we're going to go to controls. We're going to click that. And so for controls, what we're going to do is we're going to want to make a separate widget that's just going to open up basically a separate screen. You can have it to where basically an image just comes up over your menu, but then you have to, disable every single button and you have to, make sure everything's good. But if we just make it its own widget, then that means it'll be a lot cleaner for us to use. So that's what we're going to do. And make a widget called W_controls. And we're just going to go inside here. Again, add a canvas panel. Right there. Then we're going to add an image, which I'm just realizing I didn't make one of these, so give me 1 second. And then we're just, again, just make it as big as the screen and anchor it. Okay, and then for the image, I just got controls from Batman Arkham Knight, so we're just going to have this here. And so here we just have, a separate widget that's going to show our controls. So we're going to go here. We are going to add a node called remove from parent. This is basically just going to get rid of the main menu widget. So we're just going to do that. Target is self because we're going to be removing the main menu. And then we're going to do what we did in the main menu level blueprint. We're going to create a widget. And then we're going to, select controls. And then we're going to add to viewport. All right, so what that's going to look like is we go here, we hit controls, and it brings us to controls. The picture's a little pixelated, so again, just make sure you make your UI good, but we have our controls here. But if you notice, there's no way for us to get back. And if you also notice when I'm clicking, it's going in and out because we don't have the proper settings. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete these two. And to fix the issue with our mouse, we're going to open our level blueprint, and we're just going to, well, first we should have commented this, because remember, you always need to comment everything. And this is just going to be called menu setup. And we're literally just going to copy the player controller, copy this and copy that, as well as this reroute node. We're going to go to controls. We're going to paste that in. And the player controller is basically accessible from any blueprint, so there's no reference issue because you can always get the player blueprint no matter what. So it'll work perfectly. We just need to connect. We need to go off here, do self, which gets a reference to basically self or this, this blueprint. You can also do this for actors, so you can have it to where you can get a reference for self or basically any actor or widget that you have. So there we have that, and we're just going to call this setup. So now that issue will go away, but now we still have the issue of the back button. But before we do that, I'm gonna go over the credits. For a reason you'll see in a second. We're gonna go into widgets. We're going to make a new widget. We're gonna call it W_credits. Open it up, canvas panel. Going to add a canvas panel right there. And let's say hypothetically that, oh, we forgot to make the art in whatever software we used for the actual credits. Oh no, what are we going to do? We don't have time to fix it, hypothetically. Well, you can actually make some stuff in Unreal. So we're just going to call this, so I'm just going to bring in the same background image. Okay, so I've added that. So now I want to actually, make the credits, but I need a way to do that. So you can actually in Unreal, you can install fonts to use. So what you need for that is you need a type file. A great place to get that and a great reference to use is a website called 1001 Fonts. It's my favorite font website. They have free fonts. Here, you can search for different things. You can put text here. So say, I want something like main menu. I can see what that looks like in different fonts. All of these are free. However, you notice that there's these red tags and these, yellow tags. These mean that you can't actually use them for commercial use or for projects in general. So what we can do here is we can click here for commercial free. We get these green tags, and you can basically use any of these fonts in your projects. Just brief warning, some people will select it as this, but then put in a little note when you download it, like, hey, don't use this for certain projects. I don't know why they select this thing, but they do. But, this is just a great resource to get certain fonts. Just, double check, do due diligence to make sure that you're using a font that people actually want you to be using. But we can actually download the file. And so the font I used was a font called Nero. I've already downloaded the file. So let me just pull it up. So in that website, you just hit download and it gives you a little pack here to unfold it. And it gives you this little thing. So this is an OTF file. I think there's another one. I think the other one is a TFF file. Both of those work. So you can just double click this, and the first thing you can do is you can install it in your computer, which I already have done. So you install this, it'll appear in basically most products that use font. At least I know it works for Adobe products. I don't know if it works for Procreate or other things. I really don't know if this works on Mac in general, but for PC and for Adobe product, it works great. But we can also just rip this file out. So let's actually just, extract it. But if we extract it, you see we have this little type file. For some reason, it'll put it from a long time ago instead of right there. So if you can't find it, like if in your downloads, just scroll down, you can find it. But we can just basically take this file and then just drag it into Unreal. And then it's going to say, would you like to create a new font using this imported font face as its default font? We're going to hit yes. And it creates these two different files. Credits here. Let's grab a text box. So we can go down here. We can make it bigger. That just makes it to where you can type bigger things. And then let's just I'll put in my name, Kaysen Quisenberry, Unreal Dev. Right, and so that'll appear there. And then we go down to font. As you can see, the only default font in Unreal is Roberto for some reason, which is a really, really ugly font. So if we go down here, we can find our font that we actually want, which is this. But as you can see, that's not the color that we want. So we can go over here and we can change the color, but we want to match it exactly, let's say. So let's get this eyedropper, and we can actually just go over here and click this eyedropper again, and then just get this exact yellow. Now it might be a little off, so that's an important thing to remember if you're doing it in this style, is that colors might not be correct, but this is just one way to do it. I personally recommend designing it in other things, designing it in a different software, but this is a technique to. So let's do here. I like to do size to content, just because it's a little easier to work with. And there, we have the credits. However, like the other thing, and let's anchor this. So let's actually move this anchor right here. but we still don't have a back button. What we can do is we can get a button, and then we just get it as an image. Again, this isn't the recommended way to do it, but this is technically a way to do it. I just want to show you all the different ways that you can. All right, so I have a blank button here. I'm just going to add that. We're going to, again, do 10. So I'm just going to set up this button like I did the other ones real quick. All right, so I set up the button, so let's add some text. So we go in here, and then as you can see, if we just drag it on there, it's going to automatically lock onto it. And then we can do the same thing where we change the font, change what it says to back, then change the color, and then change the size. All right, so there we have that, but now let's actually make the functionality of our back buttons. Go to on clicked. Oh, okay, so first, again, we're going to want to get our same settings from the other thing. So basically, anytime you have any new widgets, just make sure you get, sort of this setup right here. And we're going to do for our back button is we're going to go back to our main menu widget. We're going to go to this section. We're just going to copy and paste this over here. But we're going to change this class to our main menu. So basically what that's going to do is we're going to press play. We're going to go to credits. Oh, I forgot to add the functionality for the credit button. So go down. There we go. Just do this. And then we're going to do credits. And then we're just going to go up here, press play, go to credits, it goes here, we go back, it goes here, and then our start and everything else works the exact same way. Okay, and the next step is just to add a back button to the controls as well. It's going to work the exact same way as the last one, so just copy and paste the code over and just make a button here. So I'm just going to do that real quick. And now we have a fully functioning main menu, so we can go to controls, go back, go to credits, go back, exit, we'll exit the game, and then start, we'll start the game. Alright, so now that we have that, there's one last step. So to actually have this main menu be the first thing that happens in our game, we're going to go to project settings. We're going to go to maps and modes. And here we have the editor startup. That is going to basically open whatever map you want to be working on when you open the actual Unreal application. Game default map is actually going to be the map that opens when we actually package the product. So we're going to want to switch this to main menu. That way that the start menu will appear when we first start the game in the actual application. Now the next thing we're going to move on to is the pause menu. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is obviously make a widget for the pause menu. So we're going to create another user widget. I'm going to call this W_pause menu. First things first, again, we're going to need a canvas panel, so throw that on. Now, of course, you can design your pause menu however you want. However, blurring the screen is very popular. So I'm just going to show you how to do a blur. So we're just going to type into the palette background blur, which then we're going to drag here. Again, we're just going to do the same thing as we did with the image before, where we're just going to make this 1920 and then 1080. It's going to cover the screen. We're going to anchor it to the whole thing. But what's very important down here is this blur strength. So this is how blurry the background is going to become due to this blurred background. I typically like to do between 10 and 20, so I'm just going to do 15. Do whatever you want. And for the Z order, we're just going to go ahead and make this -1, so we don't have to mess with that. So instead of the last thing where I dragged in each individual button, I'm going to show you guys another method of how to actually incorporate your button. So instead of getting a button, we're going to get an image, which we're going to want to connect to the canvas panel, not to the background blur. To get it, I'm just going to make it this big, and then I'll edit it once I actually change the image. So to the image, pause, and I made a little pause menu. Again, doesn't look very good. Make sure you make your UI look good. But you can see I have it right here. I have it all in together as one image, but you might be wondering, how am I going to do this and how am I going to make the functionality? I'll show you in just a second. All right, so there you go. So how do we do this? This is all one image. This isn't a button. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to make basically an invisible button. So we're going to drag in a button. Again, make sure it's not connected to anything, just connected to the canvas panel. This is going to be our start button. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to make it the same size, or actually a little bit bigger than the start button. Which also, this start should probably say resume since it's a start button. Again, This is just mainly for demonstration purposes. So do research when you're actually designing the UI and make it look good. So we're just going to call this resume. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to normal. We are going to go to image trace, and we're going to take this alpha and make it 0, which basically makes it invisible. And from there, we can resize it a little bit. And we can do the same thing as this. So we're going to do that on all 3 of them. Now, this is going to make it to where you actually don't show a difference on your buttons when you hover them. So if you want it to be where you hover them, it's a different color. When you press them a different color, you're going to have to use the other method. But if you're looking for something a little quick, this does the job pretty good. So then we have the resume. Then we're just going to add buttons to each of these. All right, so now we have the buttons set up to where they're invisible and they're completely clickable. But let's actually set up the code for pausing the game, which actually doesn't happen inside of the widget, but happens inside of your character. All right, so I have my third-person character here, but first we should probably edit project settings just to get the pause features. So we're going to go to inputs. So let's hit plus. Let's call this pause. Now, an important thing to note, typically the button for pausing is escaping. However, there's a slight issue when actually testing that in the game. So say hypothetically we wanted to press escape to just test the game out. I'm going to hit escape. It's going to just exit out of the actual PlayStation, like the actual playing, because that's what it's programmed to do. It's programmed for the escape to be the escape for the game. So you can't actually test the pause function like that. So to get around this, what we can do is we can just add a second one, P. I typically like to use the P key. So you add the P key, and then you can just delete this later. I think tab is also can be used as a pause button traditionally. So you can do tab or you can do P, and you can test it out that way and just delete it if you only want escape to be the pause button in the actual game. Just an important thing to note. And then for the controller, what you're going to want to do is called the special left, or special right is going to be the pause button traditionally. All right, so now let's actually code the pause. So we're going to put in pause, go to the action map event that we created. Off that, we're going to simply set game paused. This is actually just going to pause the game, pretty self-explanatory, but you need to make sure that that boolean is checked to be true. We are then going to create widget, which is going to be our pause menu. We're then again going to add to viewport. And then we're going to go ahead and run the settings that we did for the main menu here. We're going to get player controller. From there, we are going to set show mouse cursor. Go here, set this to true. We are then going to set game mode game and UI. Or set mode game and UI, sorry. And then again, just connect this to here. Okay, so now if we go in and we hit the pause button, you see that it appears, but none of these, of course, have functionality yet. So let's go make them functional. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the start button, which this is probably going to be the resume button for you, but we're just going to go here. We're going to delete all this, go up here, and then off of this, basically what we're going to do is go to back to our third-person character. We are just going to get this node and then this node, and then go here, paste that in. So we are just going to go here to set that to false. We are then going to just remove from parent, which is basically just going to delete this widget from existence. Move this over, pop this up, and then we're going to set input mode game only. Once again, very important node that for some reason is never talked about in any of the videos that I've seen at least. And then go here, and then we resume. It's going to go back to the game. Oh, I forgot to, we also need to hide the mouse cursor, or we need to unclick this little button. So we go here, go resume, and then boom, back in the game. We actually need to go back to the designer. So we're going to go to the designer, and we're going to add an image. Now you can do this different ways, of course. One way is just to do what we did with the start menu and just make it to where the credits and controls are different widgets. Just make sure that you have it to where they're a different widget than the one that we made for the main menu, because if you do that one, the back button will take them back to the main menu, which we don't want. So what we're going to want to do is instead make a new one and just basically make it to where it does the same thing as the back button but has the pause button instead of the main menu. But for this I'm just going to show a different version of, different things you can do. So I'm going to have it to where basically we have like this little kick out image. So I'm just going to call this, a kick out. So right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just anchor that right there. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to have it to where it is blank. I'm going to make sure that is variable is checked. This is going to make sure that it is a variable that we can edit. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to visibility and I'm going to hit create binding. So this is just basically going to be a thing that determines whether or not it is visible. And so what we're basically going to do is going to create a boolean. This boolean is so we're going to make a branch and then we're just going to promote this to a variable. We're going to call this is kickout visible. So there we have kickout visible. We go down here, go up here. All right, so if kickout is visible, we're going to set that to true. If kickoff is not, we're going to set this to hidden. So this basically, a binding basically is just a function that's basically going to be constantly looking for certain things. So it's going to be constantly checking this to make sure that this boolean is true or false. So it's sort of like event tick, but not as expensive. And you can do this for anything. You can do this for text. You can do this for images. You can do it for, a lot of different things. And I'll show some more. But we are now going to go to this button on clicked. Okay. So let's go here. So we're going to go. So I don't have an image for credits and I don't feel like making one. So just, do credits how you want to do. It'd be the exact same thing as this, but I'm just going to use controls instead. So we're going to go here. We're going to get this boolean and we're going to set it to true. Get this kickout variable. We're going to set brush from texture, which is basically like just setting it from an image. So from texture, I'm going to go there, select asset, which is going to be controls, and then we're going to match size, just so it looks a little better. Usually match size just makes it look how you want it to look, but you don't have to do that. You can play around with that as well. Now we go here, we press pause, control, it pops out here. And so what you can do for the rest of them, if you want it to be basically if they press any other button, it goes away, we can just set that to false. Which I won't do for resume because it'll automatically do it, but you could do that for credits. So the next thing we're going to do is the exit button, which we're going to have a system where basically if you do exit, in most games or in a lot of games, it will ask you if you want to exit to desktop or exit to like the main menu. So we're just going to have that functionality. If you want it to where it just automatically goes to main menu or automatically just goes to the desktop, you can just pick one of these, but I'm just going to set it up to where you have the actual option. Okay, so now I've set up these two buttons and I have them to where they're labeled. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with this kickout image, where we're basically going to bind the visibility to a different variable. So we're going to go here, we're going to bind, create binding. We are going to call this get exit visibility because it's going to apply for two of them. So we're going to create another variable, this one called exiting. And so we're just basically going to make it to where if this is true, they're visible, and if it's not true, they're invisible, similar to the last one, just with a different variable. Okay, so now that we have that, the next thing to do is to then go back to the designer, do the same thing for this one. So you don't have to create a new binding every time. We can just go down here. It has our, our bindings that we've already made. We're going to do exit visibility. However, we're also going to want to have these buttons disabled, because just because a button is invisible doesn't mean that it doesn't function. So hypothetically, they could accidentally click this without wanting to see it. So we need to make it to where they are disabled. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an event construct, which again is just like event begin play. I even still type that just because it's what I remember easier. So we're going to go here. We're then going to drag in our main menu button, and then we're going to drag in our desktop button. And we're basically just going to go off here, and then we're going to set enabled. We're going to set is enabled. So this is just going to tell us whether or not the button is actually functional. So we're just going to have it to where it's going to automatically do that. We can set it up for both of them. So at the beginning, these buttons are going to be disabled. All right, so there we go. The next thing that we're going to do is actually set up the exit button itself. So we're going to go here. We're going to go there, unclicked. So for this, what we're just going to do is we're going to come here, get these nodes, go down here, set this to true, and then we're also going to set exiting to true. And just to show how you can make the kickout not visible, we're just going to set kickout visible to false, which is going to make that kickout not show anything when we press this button. Okay, so next is to actually make the other buttons that are actually going to do the exiting for us work. So the first we're going to do is main menu. So since our main menu is its own map, it's basically just going to open a map. So we're going to do open level by name. And I named mine main menu, but again, make sure you get the exact name right or it's going to cause an error. So what I like to do is I like to actually go to the physical map and then just hit rename, Control C, or copy, Control C, then we go to our pause menu, go in here, Control V. So now that will take us to our main menu. And then the next thing to do is this other button, which again is going to be like our exit button from the main menu, which is very easy, which is just going to be quit game. So if we go here, okay. So we're going to hit play, we're going to hit pause, we're going to hit exit. Or, well, first you can see, they're not there because of the binding, and then you can see we click, it does nothing. So we go here, we get these two little options. We do main menu, it takes us to the main menu. Let's start the game back up, hit pause, and if we go to desktop, it just quits the game. So if people don't know, a HUD or heads up display is basically anything that is on top of the game while you're playing it. So this is going to be like your health bar. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a health bar, a score counter, which could also be used, say, for an ammo counter or for a coin counter or something like that. So just going to be something that counts how many of a certain thing you have. And then also going to have a timer. Create a widget, just like every other thing. You know the drill by now. So W_HUD. And then we're going to open this. You also know the drill. We're, of course, going to immediately add a canvas panel. Boom, right there. Alright, so we're going to start with the health bar, so that means we're going to get what's called a progress bar. So we're going to just drag this in. As you can see, it just looks like a button, but I'll show you the differences. So we're just going to call this HP bar, which HP stands for health points if you're not aware. So we're going to go up here, let's just put it in this corner, let's elongate it. We'll just tie it to this corner. And then if we go to style, we can actually, select the image. So we are going to go to this bar that I made. So I have this here, and I'm going to, select an image. I made a little goofy little health bar, but as you can see, it looks very stretched. That's because we have draw as box. Change this to image. So then we're going to straighten out. So I just made this goofy little thing. It's just like a little bar with a star. Again, make your UI look good. So the background image is basically what's going to look like normally. Or no, the background image is what it's going to look like when it's empty. So we're actually going to want to select tint and make this black, or make this, whatever color you want it to be when it's not filled. You could also make this a separate image. So if you want to individually design what it looks like when it's empty, you can also do that as well. But for me, I'm just going to make this a tint. And then for the fill image, we are just going to make it the same thing, but we're going to have it to where it's not a tint. Make sure you have it drawn as an image. And so a marquee image is basically if you want it to have an animation, but you don't have to have. So I'm just going to select this just to show you guys later. So now we fill this out, let me show you what a marquee is just so you know. So if we do enable fill animation and we do marquee, you can see it just moves and animates. So I personally don't like, it looks goofy if you don't set it up. You have to actually set it up for a marquee. So if you want to have an animated thing, you just basically just need it to where it is not a very big shape like this star, and you need to make it to where it basically, while it's moving, it'll look the same as the background image. Now you may notice something weird is that it's green while this is gold. That's because Unreal has a really dumb feature where appearance for some reason has a separate tint that is applied to all of these, and for some reason the default is blue. So change this to white and it'll look like how you actually want it. I don't know why they do that. That's really dumb, honestly. So we're going to unselect these. And here we have the percent. So if you look at this, if it's 0, it'll be like this. If it's like full, look like this. Halfway, you know, you can just like test it. You can also make it go from different areas. So this is bar fill style. So, you know, you can do right to left. So now if we do it, it'll go that way. You can also do from the center. So it'll go down like that, which looks a little wonky. That's more for if, I guess, if you have like a circle. And, you know, there's just like a bunch of different options. And so what we can do for this is that we're actually going to go to our third person character. So just real quickly, I'm going to set up a super basic health system. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an event called event any damage, which is just basically going to register if any damage is being applied to the character. We're going to go here. We're going to make a new variable called health or player health or whatever you want to call it. We're going to, you can make this either an integer or a float. Me personally, I like to make it a float. So we're going to get this. Let's compile save. Let's make the default of this 100. Just so we have easy numbers. If you're not making 100, you do have to do math to make it a percentage, which basically means you just have to divide it by 100. But for me, I'm just going to do 100 real quick. And so I'm going to go here. Going to get health. And then we're going to minus or subtract. And we're going to get this here, and we're actually going to put this here. And so we're going to, you know, clamp. I'm going to make what's called a clamp, which basically is just going to make it to where these numbers are capped at certain levels. So I'm going to have the minimum be 0 and the maximum be 100. And then we are just going to basically set this variable here. Right there. And then, so obviously if you have a death animation or something like that, you can set that up after this. But what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to set it up to where if we have 0 health, which meaning we're dead, instead of doing an animation, I'm just going to print a string that says, you know, I'm just going to print a string just to show that we've died. So I'm just going to say, you know, something like oof, dead. And so now we have a, you know, a very basic health system. So here, if you're curious, you know, this is where you put like a death animation or like, you know, whatever happens when you death, you know, a death screen, you know, something like that. So then we are just going to call this, you know, health system. But how do we actually get our health to be the same in our HUD? So we're going to save. Going to go to our HUD here. So we're going to go off event construct, which again is like event begin play. We're just going to get actor of class. This is of course in our HUD widget. So then we're just going to get your player character, which for me is third person character. We're then going to just promote this to a variable, which I'm going to call player ref. So then we're then going to go back to our function. We're going to put this in. We're just going to get health. Connect that right there. So now whenever our health changes, it'll automatically update this bar. So let's just, to show this off, I'm going to make, you know, something that does damage. So we're going to do backspace. We're going to drag off here, do an apply damage node. So let's do 20 just to show, you know, some massive differences. And then we're just going to get self, a reference to self. And you don't have to do this. This is mainly just for me to show it off to you, but I just thought I'd put, you know, how I'm doing it. So then we're going to compile save. So now when I hit backspace, we're going to actually do damage. So let's play. Oh, I forgot a very important step, which is to go to the event begin play up here. All right, so go to event begin play, and then I'm going to select a new node on this. You can just put it in whatever way you want. If you need a sequence, just add one of those. And we're just going to create widget. All right, so we're going to create widget. We're going to make this our HUD. And then we're just going to add to viewport. And then also, because the HUD is pretty important and sometimes you need to deal with it, I like to just go ahead and make it a variable. It just depends on what you're doing, on whether or not you'll ever use this variable. If you're not using it, you can always delete it, you know, at the end of the project, or towards a point where you know you're not going to use it. But just go ahead and select that there. Okay, so in this graph, okay, so we connected that, but actually what we need to do is divide this divide this by 100. That way we have it to where, so basically the bar works on a scale of 0 to 1. So basically by dividing it by 100, we're going to make it to where it is within this scale of 0 to 1. So now that we have that, okay, so now let's test it out. So we go here, and now it's finally on the screen. We hit backspace. It's going to, take away some of our health. Backspace again, take away our health. As you can see, it's going to go down. And then boom, we're dead. So just to show off how we're going to do collectibles, I'm just going, or a collectible counter, I'm going to go to this actor here. I'm just going to use this box. I'm going to add event begin overlap. And what we're just going to do is that we are going to go to here. Go back to your player character. Let's create a variable. So I'm just going to call it score. I'm going to go ahead and make this a integer. I'm going to move this up. So there we have score here. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go here. We are just going to do other actor has tag. And if the tag is player, instead of making it to where you actually have to press a key to pick this up, I'm just going to make it to where if you walk over it, it's just going to automatically do it. So we're going to go here. We are then just going to get a reference to the player, which you should probably do in event begin play, but just for now, I'm just going to do it right here. So get actor of class. Again, you should probably do this in event begin play, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to do it here. Get our player character, third person character, set score, go there, and then you're probably going to have some variable here. We'll do this one. That's just how much the score bonus is, or how much the collectible is. So if it's ammo or something, you probably want it to be like, 1 or something, or if it's, so you probably just wanted this to be like whatever number you want to add to your score or your counter or whatever it is you're doing. So for me, I'm just going to do 100. I'm going to name this score bonus just so we don't cause confusions. Make sure you try not to name variables the same thing even in different blueprints just to make things easier. So we're just going to add this. Right there. Plug that in. Straighten that out. And there we have that little system right here. Oh, and then let's just destroy actor since it's collectible. And also because, just so we don't want this to happen multiple times, we're going to add a do once. Just to make things a little cleaner. So there we have the code for that, and we're just going to say, score. And so then what we're going to do is let's go actually set up the HUD element. So I'm just going to go here to the designer. Let's go text. So I'm going to add 2 things of text. The first one is just going to say score. This. And then let me, change the font. Change the color. And then right there. And so this is just going to be text that just says score or just says, coins or ammo or whatever. But then we're actually going to want to have a separate text for the actual score itself. So let's actually just copy this so we have the same settings. Let's say score count. So we're going to go here, right beside it. And for this, we're just going to put in an example score like 0000. Let's make sure we anchor these. So I'm just going to put that there. Put that here. And so we're just going to go to text right here. We're going to create a binding. And again, we're just going to get the player ref. And we're just going to put score. You don't need to do any math or anything like that. Score, and you see this is a text variable. But if we plug this in here, it is going to convert it for us. And so now let's actually, put some of these actors into the world. Let me go ahead and delete these because they're kind of distracting. Let me just put, a few of them around. Now if we press play, you can see our score is 0. We go up, score is 100, score is 200, score is 300. Which I could probably, again, the UI up there doesn't look very good. I'm not taking the time to properly space things. And of course, you're going to want to play around with it, make sure everything looks good. Make sure that you're always checking the designer versus the thing. This is also why it's important to package the game to see how the UI actually looks in the actual package, just to make sure everything's where you want it. And just, keep editing your UI until it is is exactly how you want it. And so then we have a collectible score. Okay, so let's do the same thing where we're just basically going to add some editable text over here. Let's put it in this corner though. So I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to drag it over here. We're going to change this to, actually I forgot, we need to separate into two. So let's do seconds. So we're just going to move this over here. And let's change this to 0, 0. However, we're also going to need a colon for a timer. So let's duplicate this. Bring this over here. Right there. Get rid of the score. Let's go ahead and just size this to content so it's easier to work with. Let's go here. So this is seconds, so we're going to copy this. We're going to bring this over here. This is going to be minutes. So let's just move this here. Make sure you're always anchoring all of your assets. So there we have that. Let's go to the graph, and then let's just go ahead and add two variables, one called seconds, one called minutes, and we're going to make both of these integers. You can technically make them floats, but I think it's a lot easier to work with integers for this. Let's call this setup. And then we're going to actually use the event tick for this. So we're going to do event tick. Going to put this up here. And then we're basically going to add a 1 second delay, because basically every 1 second we want 1 second to pass. We don't want it to have a second go by every tick, because that is every frame. So what we're going to then do is we're going to set seconds. We are then going to get seconds. And then we're going to add 1, because we want to add 1 second every second. Now this is for a timer going up. If you want to do a timer going down, you would just reverse this, and you basically just reverse this entire process and use minuses where you use plus. So go there. Okay, so next we're going to want to check if these seconds have actually reached, 60 seconds, because that's a minute. So we're going to have a branch here. If seconds are greater than 59, we are going to want to change the value of minutes and seconds. So for this, what we're going to want to do is do the same thing we did for seconds over here, but with minutes. So we're just going to get minutes, We're going to add 1. And then we're going to want to set minutes. And then we're going to want to set seconds to 0 because once it reaches 59, we want it to reset. So just set that to 0. Okay, so now let's go to our designer. We're going to do the very same thing we did for score. Let's go to our designer. We're going to do the same thing we did for score. So we're just going to create a binding. And we are just going to, what is this for? This is minutes. So we're just going to go here. Oop, not right. So I ran into a little bit of a glitch. So make sure that your integer and your text are labeled differently, because when you create a binding, it's going to basically make this text a variable. That's my bad, I forgot to remember. So I just put int over here, and so I'm just going to replace this right here. So I ran into a little issue there, but it's no problem. And so we're going to set that. And okay, so now let's go back to here, and we're just going to plug this in. So again, it's going to convert this integer into a text. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for seconds. So again, make sure that this is named something differently than the actual variable that we're using. So then let's go in here. Okay, so now we have that set up. Let's actually go look at it right here. All right, so in the corner we have our timer. Oh, it's a little awkwardly spaced because it's not doing the 0, 0. So what we're going to want to do is basically just go over here and change this binding for a second, change the default to that, to just 1, 0. Going to select that back. So now it'll look a little less awkward. So now we have a timer that is running up in the right hand corner. It's kind of hard to see because again, I didn't optimize the UI design. I didn't really design it at all. But there we have a timer that is going to be counting up. And we can do the same thing if we want to count down. All we have to do is just make these minuses. Make these 2 minuses and then just set the default value of these to be, however long you want it to be. Set the default value of minute to be 5 if you want it to be 5 minutes. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Obviously, I didn't cover everything you can do with widgets, but I hope I gave you the fundamental knowledge that you need to know in order to go out and start making your own UI and UI elements for your games. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned everything you need to know about the basics of the widget system in Unreal Engine 5.